A kind response to an atheist. Harmony Road Belief Systems from DGM Insights.
So I just had a conversation with an atheist. They were really nice, actually, a couple of them. Very polite conversation, which is rare. And I'm polite, always polite, because there's no reason to get rude. You lose if you're rude. So I had this conversation with two atheists, and he was able to express the point that I did huge amounts of research in atheism, and you read from Hitchens to Dawkins to Sam Harris, although he's pretty reasonable and a good speaker. But I've noticed that they have a whole Stephen Fry, genius man, great storyteller. But you go through their categories of information, and they really have no argument at all. They center on what the religions did, therefore there is no God, that there's evil in the world, therefore there is no God. Fry tells this beautiful story about, why would God not cure cancer? Why would, and somebody else said basically, like Dawkins, like there is no God because there's no proof of God. That's kind of another really idiotic example. So you have cavemen, people that just get out of the cave or get out of the tents or looking at building a house, and they don't want to be wanderers anymore. They want to plant crops, which has been attributed historically to alien God interventions. So now I'm only putting alien first because it's an A and God next because it's a G, but they attribute it to that intervention with out of world people. So go back to what I was saying is that they went from historically they went at one point from one culture to another, and the one culture had its gods and the other culture adopted the gods or changed them slightly, and so that's what the Bible was written for. That's what the Sumerian writings were aimed at, and that's where the Book of Enoch was written towards. And so you have these books and stories that all corroborate. They're pretty similar in a lot of ways, and there's some others. There's the Japanese stories that are very similar, ancient. So that's what we have to work with in the past, is talking to those to that kind of public and people. So you have these, get back to what I was saying, you have these atheists that say, oh, there is no proof of God. And I'm wondering if they're just not accepting the proof. I asked this of the atheist, and he didn't really have an answer. He said, I said, well, it's like, what do you accept as proof? So scientists get off the hook. They think something's real, string theory and some others. So they think they're real, and they call them theories or theorems. And so they get off the hook logically by these people because they're not calling them fact. And a lot of their facts aren't really facts. And so it's like in math, if you use an average, like the average of time, the average of gravity. In math, if you use an average, you're not going to have an accurate calculation. So if it turns out accurately, it kind of indicates that maybe you don't have the right answer. And that's what a lot of the theories have been disproved by. So we go back to what we were saying. Atheists say, okay, so there's evil in religion. Well, there's evil in mankind. There's oppressive governments, evil all over the place. There's oppressive cultures, certainly. Some of those based on those writings, I understand, but that does not prove that there is no God just because a religion is evil or a person in a religion is evil. It means that person is. You have to kind of also look at the context, the history around that person, were they considered evil. I went to a museum during the time they were trying to get rid of statues, and they were debating locally whether they should get rid of the statue, and the curator asked me what I thought, and I said, well, you have to judge a person by the culture of the time. Not 200 years ago. You have to judge them. I mean, not today's culture, but 200 years ago. And at the time, the man was, he transported slaves, but he was not cruel, and he was not murderous, and he was not a rapist, as some others were. And so I said, you need to really kind of judge him about his time period. So that's sort of true about religion, too. You have to judge it from its time period. But go back to what they were saying, is that because religion's evil doesn't mean there is no God. It means that he's not interceded, and I'll get to that in a second. The second main proof of atheists is that, so there's cancer in children. Stephen Fry does a beautiful story about this child and having cancer, or or why doesn't he cure cancer? Why doesn't he let us live longer? Why doesn't he cure other ailments? And the main stupidity of that argument is that he doesn't have to. If you look at nature, the general rule that's used is survival of the fittest. If even a lion is sick, it gets slaughtered and eaten. If it's a elk or a buffalo or any other animal, it's survival of the fittest and survival of the healthiest, and that's generally true. So that's kind of the rule of the universe. And so to say that's a proof there is no God, no, that's just a misunderstanding of the idea of what God may think and may reason on. He said in the Bible, for example, to have somebody as their friend, Abraham, and yet Abraham still died. So, and I guess the third one is that has to do with negativity of proof. Now, I said for a long time, you can't prove a negative. You can't prove something didn't exist. You can only prove a positive, something did exist. That's not absolutely true, but in this case, what do you take as proof? 100,000 accounts of God-alien encounters, 100,000 more just during our last couple hundred years. What are you ignoring as proof? It's like a scientist who ignores hydrogen. It's just, you don't want to believe their theorems, right? Because hydrogen's real, oxygen's real. So it's really, and I hear this huge long story by Neil deGrasse Tyson, nice guy. I really like him. And he does have some faults in his reasoning, and I heard this long story about a bear. That's not the point. The point he made was confused and didn't really work. So the point is that just because something's hiding doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. You have these army officers, and they have camouflage, and they go in, they sneak up on people, and people are surprised. Whoa, he snuck up on me. However, that's what his job is. So if aliens or gods want to hide from us, they're most certainly welcome to. And they would be better at it than a camouflage in a human. So there is no proof is not negative proof or positive proof. It is assumptions. What are you discounting as proof? What are you discounting as what should be really thought about? Now that's the reason why a lot of scientists are turning to creationism and away from atheism, and they're turning to belief in God. So that's something to think about. It's something to reason on. Thank you.
Please feel free in emailing us at dgminsights@gmail.com.